Starswirl and I have almost reached the front door when the scream echoes through the palace. Somehow I think the rules of this little game just changed.
How quickly can we get that spell off?
I asked Starswirl. It's supposed to take about 2 hours. Maybe if we cut some corners I can get it down to one, he says. We gallop out of the front door of the palace as a loud crashing noise comes from somewhere behind us. I turn to close the door and seal it behind us with my own magic. Every second I can buy counts right now.
Cut them. Turn the thing into an end sphere if that's what it takes. We don't have an hour,
I say. Well, to cast it any faster than that, I'd need a lot more power. Like an order of magnitude more than both of us put together, he says. Even through the sealed door, I can hear the hoofbeats of something very big and very angry pounding against the stone floor, coming after us.
Well, think of something. Right now, though, I think we're going to need one of those illusion spells if we're going to make it through the next 5 minutes,
I say. Starswirl nods, and his horn glows as we're wrapped in a veil that renders us invisible. We move as quickly as we dare, balancing the need to put distance between us and the Queen against the need to move quietly. The quiet streets of Canterlot look unusual, empty and abandoned. The shattered windows and broken doors of the building don't look like they've been disturbed for weeks. Outside of the castle itself, the city is a ghost town. The doors behind us slam as something impacts them from the other side. I figure that Queen Sparkle will need 10, maybe 15 seconds to unravel my ward, and I'm betting she doesn't have the presence of mind to just teleport through. Turns out she does neither. The door is still for a moment. Then, an enraged changeling queen bursts through the foot-thick marble wall next to it like it's made of wet streamer paper.
You broke my Luna!
She screams in the royal Canterlot voice. Guess she inherited that too while she was draining the princess. She looks around, but her eyes pass by without spotting us.
Not again. This wasn't supposed to happen again. This wasn't supposed to happen anymore. Forever was going to be okay if I could just spend it with her,
says Queen Sparkle more quietly. I doubt she intended that for our ears.
Twilight Sparkle! You vicious evil monster! I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to break you piece by piece over and over again until you've paid for everything. Tell me why. Why? What did I do to you that you'd slip in there like a coward and murder the pony I loved? Why couldn't you just come for me instead?
She calls out over our heads in the royal Canterlot voice again. She can't possibly expect us to answer. Maybe I can use this to my advantage. There's a trick I picked up back during a magical sparring match with Luna that got a little out of hoof one time. I cast a ventriloquism cantrip on myself and redirect my voice so it's coming from a nearby clock shop.
That wasn't love. That was something sick and wrong. You hurt her.
What did she think of you when you weren't raping her brain with that venom of yours? Queen Sparkle rushes past us over to the shop and stops in front of it. Her horn flares as she wraps the entire building in a field and braces herself. Windows and walls crack apart as the frame of the building buckles and implodes. Not satisfied with the sphere of rubble that remains, Queen Sparkle keeps casting, squeezing even tighter until it grinds itself into dust and sand. Holy buck.
Don't listen to her, Twilight, says Queen Sparkle. Every couple fights sometimes. Luna loved it when you bit her. She said so. It's her own fault I had to bite her in the first place. If she would have just stopped screaming long enough for me to explain, I could have shown her how much better it was this way. No pony can tell you that you were wrong. It was just the right thing to do.
she says, a barely audible whisper.
No, it wasn't.
Says my voice from the shell of a nearby cafe.
I know what you went through. I was in the time loop too, remember? You aren't me!
Screams Queen Sparkle. She surges across the street and through the picture window of the cafe. Tables and chairs come flying out as she rummages through the building, looking for us. Starswirl puts a hoof on my shoulder. I can't see him through the invisibility charm, but I can hear his whispers. We need to move, he says. I nod to him, then realize that he can't see me either.
Down towards the street corner,
I say. Maybe we can lure her away and then... I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead yet.
You aren't me, Twilight Sparkle. I did everything you did. Exactly. Remember that perfect run where we used the elements on Chrysalis? For you, it ended there, but not for me. You think you deserve to get away and leave me behind? And then you dare judge me?
Asks the Queen's voice from back behind us. When she doesn't get an answer, the clattering from the direction of the cafe stops. Everything is quiet for a moment, and I start to let myself think that she might have wandered off in another direction.
I don't need to see to find you,
I hear her voice say from somewhere above us. I look up to try and spot where it's coming from, but I can't see her in the late evening light. The sound of Starswirl's hoof steps has stopped, and I have no idea where we are in relation to one another.
I can hear your hearts beating. I can smell you. It's only a matter of time. Every minute you wait to give in to the inevitable is going to mean another month I spend breaking you.
I see a shadow pass over the ground in front of me, but it's gone too quickly to see where it came from. I feel totally exposed out here like this. Despite the protection of my spell, I creep silently over the threshold of a nearby house into what used to be a home. A dusty picture sitting on a nearby table tells me that a family of unicorns used to live here. Their smiling faces speak of happier times and hope for a future that this timeline was never lucky enough to see. A floorboard upstairs groans. Just the building settling, or am I not alone here? I stand stock still for a long time, but there's no other sound. It's getting progressively darker outside, and it won't be too much longer before my visibility becomes redundant. I have to make a move, and soon. I gradually slide towards the house's back door. Nothing happens. I strain my ears to listen for anything I can hear, but not even the chirping of evening crickets is audible. This place is completely dead. I push the door open. I should have known the hinges would be rusty. The ceiling above me explodes. For a moment, I pray that a falling rock will just crush me and end my misery before it begins. But instead, something heavy lands on me and pins me to the floor. As the dust settles, I feel two jagged hooves rolling me onto my back. I can see my own mane flopping over my face as they do so. The impact must have disabled my invisibility, because I wasn't helpless enough already.
Well, that didn't work, says the grinning changeling queen towering over me. Remember that phrase. Remember how beaten and hopeless you felt every time you heard it? Get used to that feeling, because you're mine now. I'm going to devote every single second that I would have spent snuggled up in Luna's arms to filling your existence with suffering. You will plead for death, and at first I will deny it to you. Only at first, though. I don't know how yet, but I will spend as long as it takes to trade places in the time loop with you. Then I will kill you. And then you'll wake up again. And then you'll die again. And then you'll wake up again. And then you'll die again. Maybe after a few decades of that, you'll understand why I chose to do what I did. Meanwhile, your little friend and I are going to go to your timeline. The timeline that I earned. You took my future when you killed Luna. Now, I'm taking yours, she says.
I quiver underneath her, wordlessly. But I look her dead in the eye. I won't give her the pleasure of watching me beg. Queen Sparkle perks up her ears and looks around the room.
Where is Shining Star, anyway?
She asks. When I don't answer her, she sighs.
Well, I suppose it won't be too hard to flush him out. Scream for me, Twilight, as loud as you can.
I take a deep breath, look up, and spit in her face. She doesn't even flinch.
Defiant to the end, I expected nothing less. I hope you enjoyed making that choice, because from this moment forth,
she opens her mouth, and those awful fangs slide into place.
Your mind belongs to me.
She brings her head down and bites deep into my shoulder. I do scream, finally, at the sensation of fire in my blood that I grew familiar with over all the loops where Chrysalis took me alive, turned me over to her side until the blessed cleansing flames from the elements reset everything. But the elements are gone now. The first hint of the dizziness and confusion to come starts to seep into my head. Get off of her, you overgrown mosquito bitch! A blast of magic from out of nowhere catches Queen Sparkle in the side. Even from a few feet away, the residual power coming off of it is strong enough to singe my coat. The Queen's fangs leave deep gashes as they're torn away, and Queen Sparkle goes flying. She leaves a hole when she crashes through the nearby wall, where a kitchen window used to be. I struggle to lift my head, and there's a disembodied glow of magic a little ways away. Starswirl's invisibility falls away as he runs over to me. Let me see, he says. His eyes dart back and forth over my hurt shoulder, and he frowns. The cuts aren't too bad. I can patch them up, although they might scar. I'm more worried about the venom, though. How do you feel? He asks. I don't know why he's so concerned. My shoulder doesn't hurt at all. In fact, all the little aches and pains in my body have just gone away. I'm so tired, but there's this wonderful feeling creeping through my brain. I'll slip away into a safe and happy place soon.
Feels good,
I say, just to let him know he doesn't need to worry. Damn it. Twilight, pay attention! I prepared the anti-venom spell before we left, but it won't cure you, just delay the poison's onset. I can't completely fix that without getting you back to a hospital. The spell will give you a chance, but you're going to have to try as hard as you can to fight this off. His horn glows again, and I groan as the aches and pains reappear. The pain sharpens my mind, though, and I find that I can concentrate on my own thoughts again. The happy fog I'd been sinking into recedes, but I can still feel it gently pressing in on me. Hurry, we have to move. He doesn't wait for me to get up before he channels a spell as something rustles in the bushes outside. I catch a glimpse of Queen Sparkle readying some fatal burst of magic before the world disappears. When it reappears, we're in another room altogether. I can hear a frustrated scream off in the distance as I glance up at Starswirl's smile. Come on, back on your hooves. She'll be able to track that teleport before too much longer, he says.
I say. Focus, Twilight. Sorry, my head hurts. Get moving, yeah,
I say. He walks out of my field of vision, and my head is slow to follow him. I'm not going to be operating at full effectiveness. Soon enough, I won't have the sense to realize how compromised I am.
Starswirl, wait.
He pauses. We don't have time for waiting, he says.
Just listen then. I've been under the effect of this stuff before, and even with your spell, I can feel it. It's in my head, and I'm not strong enough to fight it off,
I say. Starswirl watches me, sizing me up as I go on.
In a few minutes, maybe a half hour tops, I'm going to start to get really suggestible. If Queen Sparkle gets me alone, I could go from asset to liability in a single sentence. We can't risk that. We should split up,
I say. And then she captures you and orders you to tell her where I'm going, so she can catch me off guard while I'm casting the spell? Thanks, but no thanks, he says.
No, you wouldn't tell me where to find you,
I say. So, how do we meet up later? He asks.
We don't.
The full implications of what I'm suggesting hit him. Absolutely not, he says. There's a stable time loop, so I must be able to get back no matter what.
Because she'll take you back. She'll use you to unleash herself on our timeline. She'll do to our Luna what she did to this one. Is that what you want? Order me to lead her away to the best of my abilities, then deafen me. A few pounds of telekinetic pressure to each eardrum should do it. That'll buy you long enough to find some out-of-the-way spot to cut this timeline off forever,
I say. It's disturbing how quickly this plan came to me. Maybe on some level I started to come up with it days ago, the instant I heard I'd come to become a changeling queen. Buck you, Twilight. I'm not doing that, he says.
Why not? Why is my life worth risking all of Equestria for?
I scream at him in frustration. Like this isn't hard enough for me to even suggest. This isn't what I want. It's just the best chance our timeline has. The only reasons not to follow through with this are selfish ones. Because, you moron, you're my friend. Maybe you've got enough of those to throw some of them away this casually, but I've only got one, he says back. He seems embarrassed by the outburst and shrinks away from me. There have been a dozen times where he should have been embarrassed by his behavior before, but wasn't. What's so different about this time? Both of us go back, or neither of us do, he says quietly.
You already know you go back,
I point out. Well, then so will you, he says. He's being completely irresponsible and irrational. And damn it, why is he making it so hard to be angry at him?
You're a stubborn, completely unreasonable ass, you know that?
I say. He just smiles. I get up to my hooves and shake my head as I try to clear the cobwebs from my mind, unsuccessfully.
I have an idea,
I say. Although if I'm being honest, it's only half of one.
We need to get to the vaults. I know how to open them, assuming the queen never changed the locks. The defensive enchantments there might actually hold her off for a few minutes.
Then what?
There's no time to explain, and you wouldn't like it if I did. Trust me or leave me, your choice.
We stare one another down for several seconds that we can't really spare, but Starswirl gives in first. Fine, right, of course. I'm following the plan of the mind-controlled pony who's leading me into a completely inescapable corner with a changeling queen from Tartarus chasing us, and she won't tell me what her plan even is beyond that I'll hate it. Surely this can only end well, he rants, and throws one of his hooves into the air.
Less whining, more fleeing,
I say. It's a little harder to focus my thoughts through the haze of venom, but with a burst of magic we disappear and reappear on a castle balcony. I turn to look out over the city and see Queen Sparkle gliding over the residential district. As the energy around us dissipates, I see her head snap in our direction, and for just a moment, our eyes meet. I stick my tongue out at her, because Buck being a mature adult right now. Somehow, she gets even angrier than she already was at Starswirl, and I turn and gallop into the castle.
Do you hear that?
I ask. I could swear that her voice is just at the edge of my hearing, trying to whisper something. I suddenly feel a powerful need to understand what they're saying. It's a matter of life and death. That's the venom talking. Keep going, says Starswirl. We do, through the twisting hallways of the castle. We pass a number of changelings, but they make no move to stop us. For Queen Sparkle, this is personal. Suddenly there's a surge of noise and pain. I cry out and fall to my knees. I try to cover my ears with my hooves, but that doesn't reduce either one.
Twilight, where are you running, Twilight? Do you expect to get away?
What now? asks Starswirl.
She's in my head!
I wasn't expecting this. Chrysalis could never do this.
Just lay down, Twilight, and I'll make the hurting stop. Isn't that what we both want? For the hurting to stop?
I feel myself sliding along the floor and look up. Starswirl's grabbed my tail in his magic and is pulling me along the floor as he presses on. The sheer indignity of it all inspires me to do something I know I'm going to regret.
Hey, Queen Sparkle, how much do you want to bet this link of yours works both ways?
I ask aloud. I gather up my magic, but instead of projecting it outwards, I push it down and into my own brain. The pain is incredible, but I'm not the only one feeling it. The link breaks. Twilight, you're hurt, says Starswirl. I wipe my muzzle, and my hoof comes away bloody.
Fine.
I slur.
Go.
We press on, and thank goodness the vaults are finally in sight. I can feel the toxic pinpricks in my head as the Queen tries to reestablish the link. I stagger to the door and try to focus on the series of commands the doors need to open. They keep slipping away from me. I can hear the Queen coming for us distantly. The fear helps me push through my disorientation, and the last rune of the sequence falls into place. A mechanism inside the door shifts and it swings open. I have to lean on Starswirl for support to get inside. The door swings shut behind us and locks once again. I instantly feel a second wind coming on. The connection the Queen was exploiting to weaken me must be blocked by one of the many wards built into its security system. From in here, we have so many more options. I focus my will on the door and reset the passcode that will allow access to it. Not a moment too soon. A few seconds later, something slams into it. I try to ignore that and turn to regard the vault's interior. The treasure hoard is untouched, and also completely uninteresting as far as I'm concerned. All I care about is the pedestal in the middle of the chamber. There are 6 indentations on it, only one of which is occupied. In it is a crown, topped by a jet black 6-pointed jewel. I pause for a moment and reach out to touch it, to remind it of its proper bearer. The resulting bolt of energy flings me hard against the wall of the chamber and holds me there for a moment while it rips into me, rejecting every fiber of my being before it lets me fall to the floor. It didn't work. It was supposed to work. I choke out. Twilight, you okay? What was that you just said? Tears sting at my eyes. The element of magic was my last hope. It most of all should understand the difference between me and the Queen, but it rejected me.
How many times do I have to say it? I whisper. I'm not her. I'm not.
To his credit, Starswirl doesn't try to offer me any hollow words of encouragement or false reassurance. He just wanders off to a far corner of the room while I collect myself. It takes much too long. My head seems like it's stuffed full of cotton. I hate feeling this way, being violated in slow motion like this, as my own will and capabilities slowly slip away from me.
You do it,
I say. Do what? He asks.
Take my element. Use it to cast the spell. I can't. It doesn't want me. Maybe you can.
You can't be serious. The elements don't work for just any pony. It'll rip me apart. I just watched it throw you against a wall, and you're its bearer.
You said an order of magnitude more powerful than both of us combined, right? Well, that's where you're going to find it. The Queen will find a way in here within the... Ah!
A fresh jolt of pain rips through my mind.
She'll make us both happy. So happy. Why are we fighting her at all? I should just open the door for her right now. Shouldn't...
Starswirl slaps me.
Ow!
I say, but it knocked some sense into me.
Thanks.
Was I helping? I just wanted to slap you because you locked us in here with such a stupid excuse for a plan, he says. But he's eyeing the pillar with the element of magic on it.
Starswirl, I might not be myself for very much longer, so please listen to me. No more snark. No more banter. If any pony is qualified to wield my element, it's you. Wielding the element of magic is about friendship, and I know you don't think you can do it, but you can. I didn't think I could either the first time. You're my friend, and I believe in you. Just remember to... Ah!
Whatever is holding the Queen back, she's found a way around it.
Open the door, Twilight. No,
I moan.
open it!
I black out. A few moments later, I come to again, but I've moved from where I was before. I had been in the middle of the vault, but when I reawaken, I'm much closer to the vault entrance, and my horn is tingling in preparation for releasing the locks. I turn to Starswirl. The Queen's power has even taken from me my ability to speak. All I can do is meet his gaze and beg with my eyes. It works. Hesitantly at first, he gently touches the sole remaining element of harmony. When it doesn't disintegrate him on the spot, he lifts it and places it on his own head. The reaction is immediate, and I am blown back from the waves of power emanating from the union between the two. I feel a little more like myself, but still with the sickly and miserable influence of the Queen clawing at my mind.
What was that? What's going on?
Asks Queen Sparkle. The vault door shakes again.
Starswirl's casting the spell,
I say.
Starswirl? You said his name was Shooting Star.
I smile, even though I know she can't see me. I forgot to lie.
It's not. He's Starswirl. Yes, that Starswirl. You traitor! It was his spell! He's the one who put us here! How can you work with him after he wronged us like that?
The pressure of the Queen's will redoubles.
Kill him! Kill him for what he did to us!
To my horror, my legs start to move of their own accord, and I take a staggering step towards where Starswirl is weaving together the threads of magic to fix the time spell. My horn glows, and it's all I can do to press my face into the floor so I won't be able to interfere. Starswirl glances up and sees what's happening. Stop, Twilight. I seize the opportunity to obey the new command, and the glow of my horn dies down. The part of my mind that poison does control cools from bloodthirsty to pacified in a heartbeat.
I said kill him!
The new command overdrives the last one, and I take another step. Stop, says Starswirl, and I take it back. This isn't a long-term solution. The spell is getting more and more intricate, and soon it will take enough focus that he won't be able to tell me to stop. Not to mention that having my psyche battered back and forth like a ping-pong ball is wreaking havoc on my ability to focus. There has to be something I can say. Something I can offer her. If anypony can deduce how she thinks, I can. After all, she's me. And if I'd been through what she has, I know exactly what I would want.
Queen Sparkle, wait! The spell he's using will stop the time loop. It's disconnecting this future from all others, so you won't be able to go back to the beginning again.
I call out. Starswirl looks over at me, confused, but some of the pressure in my mind starts to lessen.
It will?
Asks the queen. I can't see through the vault door, just listen. Without the visual of the giant, scary bug monster, that's just the voice of a very hurt and very scared little filly.
Yes, it will. Once we cast this, there's no more going back. No more, well, that didn't work. I should have told you earlier, I say. All the effort she put into the lies she's been deluding herself with for so long. Please let her believe one more. So, the next time I die, this will stop? Instead of more loops, there'll be just nothing?
She asks. She's almost hopeful.
You can rest soon, Twilight, I say. Do you promise?
She asks.
I promise,
I lie, even though the words feel like ash in my mouth. I try to tell myself that this is necessary, that Queen Sparkle isn't innocent. But the only reason this is going to work is because on some level, that's exactly what she is.
I'm sorry.
She misunderstands.
Don't be sorry. I'll be with Luna and Celestia again. And all my friends, too. Soon.
The spell is growing in power behind me.
Twilight, do you think that I'll be able to tell them that I'm sorry? Do you think that they'll remember everything I did in all the different loops? Do I have to remember them?
I don't know, I tell her. My head is pounding, and it isn't from the venom.
Me neither. I think that's the best part, not knowing what comes after. I've spent too long knowing already.
Time to go, Twilight, says Starswirl. Looks like my distraction bought us the last few minutes he needed.
We're leaving now,
I call out through the vault door. The coins and gems start to rattle and shift through the room. I join Starswirl in the glowing circle, and the arcane energy tingles on my horn and skin. The rush of power fills my ears, but I can still make out one more thing Queen Sparkle says. The meanest thing that she possibly could.
Thank you.
The trip back to our timeline is a whole lot worse than the one that took us there. Starswirl wasn't kidding when he said he was cutting corners in the casting of the spell, and I briefly wonder if I'm going to arrive in 3 different pieces or 4. Somehow, we make it back alive and reappear in the library of Canterlot Castle. I only just registered that both Celestia and Luna are waiting for us, as well as all my friends, before I collapse. I feel a surge of nausea well up, and I vomit on what I'm pretty sure is an irreplaceable ancient text. All my willpower to fight against the poison is gone, but thanks to the countermeasures Starswirl took, I'm not drifting off into euphoria. I'm just staring at the ceiling, watching it spin like I just took 30 or 40 shots of Applejack Special cider reserves. Starswirl arrives in far better condition than I do. though still looking worse for wear. I can't help but notice that we've picked up a stowaway. The element of magic crown is resting on his head. Changing venom, he manages to gasp out before he too staggers on his hooves.
Oh my goodness, shouts Fluttershy
As she darts forward before any of the others can react. It's the last thing I see before I mercifully black out. I come to, and find myself lying in an infirmary bed in what's probably still the castle. The first thing I see is Fluttershy, hovering nearby. Not literally hovering. You have to specify that when you're dealing with Pegasi. But knowing her, she hasn't left my side since I collapsed.
Hey,
I say. The sound of my voice is pathetically weak.
How are you feeling, Twilight?
She asks.
Pretty awful,
I reply. Not because of the poison, though. Because of what I just saw. And what I just did. I try sitting up.
You lie down right this instant, young mare,
Demands Fluttershy. My back arches, and the back of my head slams back down against the pillow without at any point consulting my brain. And it isn't because of the force of Fluttershy's personality. It seems the mind control effect of the venom hasn't worn off yet. There's a chuckle coming from somewhere nearby, and I can at least turn my head enough to see Starswirl sitting up in the bed next to mine. Twilight, he says. Poke Fluttershy's nose. My hoof comes up involuntarily and gently taps Fluttershy right on the tip of her muzzle, which sends Starswirl into full-on convulsions of laughter.
This isn't funny,
I insist, despite all the appearances to the contrary. Fluttershy is trying to pretend not to smile too, and poorly.
Be nice, Twilight, she says. After you passed out, Starswirl told me all about what kind of poison the Queen had used on you, and helped me to mix up an antidote. He even refused to let us help him until you'd been taken care of.
I look over at the stallion in the bed next to mine, in amazement, and it gets its shows in my face. She's making it sound like a much bigger deal than it was. I only had a few cuts and scrapes. You were much worse off. Fluttershy's the real hero. If she hadn't known right where the bloodwort grows in the castle gardens, you wouldn't even be awake yet, he says. Fluttershy blushes, but quickly recovers.
The important thing is that you're going to be fine, and the last of the side effects will wear off by tomorrow evening. Until then, just stay in bed, and do what the infirmary nurses tell you to.
Not that you have a choice, Starswirl feels that he just has to add.
How is it that you were all right in the library when we came back anyway?
I ask.
Princess Celestia told us after you left, and we wanted to be there to surprise you. I guess Starswirl told her a long time ago exactly when you'd be coming home, and where.
After I get back to the past, it's one of the few details I'll be able to mention without messing everything up, he says.
I'll go tell the rest of the girls you're awake. They've been so worried, says Fluttershy.
She walks out of the room and Starswirl climbs down from his bed. Once she's left the room and closed the door behind her, he turns to me. I haven't told them anything about the other timeline, or what you said at the end there to the Queen. How did you know that would work? That she wanted that? I wince at the reminder.
I wasn't in the time loop for nearly as long as she was, and even when I got out, that's what I wanted.
I squeeze my eyes shut before looking back up at Starswirl.
Do you think there's any chance that it might be true, what I told her?
Anything's possible, he says. That's just an unnecessarily complicated way of telling me no. That timeline should be inaccessible from this one now, and vice versa. I doubt we'll ever know for sure, he says.
You were right,
I say. About what?
What you wrote. Saying I'd give myself over to madness and death. That's exactly what I did to her. She wasn't exactly stable to begin with. How do you think she's going to react when that last little scrap of hope I dangled in front of her is yanked away? She might even be too far gone to replicate the conditions of that loop.
Starswirl scoffs. She deserves it.
No. No pony deserves that, I say quietly.
Starswirl shares a moment of silence with me. I don't know what he's been thinking about, but my mind won't stop churning through all the ways I already suffered in that loop, and the infinite variety of ways I could have, and how the other me is going to have the chance to live every single one of them. I was wrong, actually, says Starswirl.
How do you figure? I ask.
Because she isn't you, he says. Indeed, says a new voice from a shadowy corner of the room. Placing blame for our decisions on forces such as fate or destiny is a trap many minds fall into. We cannot be absolved of blame or praise for our actions nearly so easily. A moment later, Princess Luna steps out from nothingness to join the conversation. Expending energy worrying over what might have been is a great waste. We must all do our best, even if what is sometimes is the product of great mistakes or tragedies. Starswirl doesn't look like he's ready to see her. Not after what happened back there. Luna, he says. I can't tell you how happy I am to see you again, he says. What a shame. I was rather looking forward to hearing you do so, she says with a gentle smile. There was, in the other timeline, I know. And I would have chosen the same fate for myself as you did.
You know? I ask incredulous. How does she keep doing that?
I always have. Though not all the details until today, she says. I know you are in great pain, my love. You will be for some time. What you did was traumatic, and consequently, it will sometimes be the subject of your nightmares. She steps over to him and wraps him up in her wings. Yet you will always wake from those nightmares, and when you do, I will be there for you. Because that is the essence of love, Starswirl, and I love you, always. Starswirl is too stunned to say or ask anything for a few moments, so Luna just holds him. What I said before. I owe you an apology, says Starswirl. Luna regards him for a minute, in which Starswirl remains silent. One traditionally follows such statement with an actual apology himself, she says. Right. Sorry, says Starswirl with a sheepish grin. Luna, I'm sorry. I came here and I saw that you were different, and I just assumed that you were somehow worse or diminished. You were correct. I am somewhat less than I was. And though your method of telling me so was arrogant and belligerent and callous and deplorable and... I think I get the point, grumbles Starswirl. Very well. Despite the fact that the way you pointed it out to me was somewhat lacking, I did need to have it pointed out. So I forgive you, if only because these next few days will likely be my last chance to say goodbye to you, and I have foolishly been squandering this great gift for petty reasons. I look at the two of them, and it's wonderful to see them back together again. I realize that for each of them, this has been bittersweet. For Luna, of course, just seeing him again must be reopening old wounds. She must be acutely aware of just how finite her time with him is. I'm struck by a fresh surge of annoyance at how he treated her in the library last week. In a way, though, for Starswirl, this is even worse. He's going to carry the burden of knowing what happens to Luna, knowing what she does to Celestia and her foal, and all the other ponies she's going to kill, and he's going to have to lie to her by omission about it. And yet somehow, they're going to love one another for decades to come. I'm not sure I can comprehend that kind of resilience. I can only hope that it runs in the family.
You should tell her,
I blurt out. I want to kick myself for intruding on the moment they were sharing.
When you go back to the past, forget keeping the timeline stable. You can make a better future together. You can tell Luna she doesn't have to feel alone. And you can stop the Nightmare Moon fiasco before it even starts.
Luna looks over at me, somewhat perturbed at my meddling. That is a rather arrogant suggestion to make, Twilight. The events are 600 years distant from one another, although it is true that in retrospect the several events from around that time were the seeds of Nightmare Moon's genesis. They were? Asks Starswirl. Like what? Luna just smiles, cryptic and sad at the same time. Tell you, and spoil the surprise? You should know me better than that, dear. She turns to me. Meddling in the tragedies of the past is an understandable impulse, but tiny changes can have unforeseen consequences. Who's to say what the impact of such knowledge on me would be? Perhaps, as you suggest, I would be able to resist it, or perhaps resign myself to it sooner. If I were banished 50 years earlier than I was, and I returned after the same interval of 1,000 years, you and your friends would not exist to stop me. Whether Celestia would be able to come up with another plan is unknowable. Plus, if you don't become the bearer, you probably won't be able to use the time loop spell, and then you won't be able to bring me here to learn the information to give it to her when I go back. And then there's a paradox. The universe would collapse, and we wouldn't ever get those snazzy matching hats, says Starswirl with a grin. The element of magic is a tool of the divine, leader of equals. It is an essential part of the fabric of the universe. It is not a hat, says Luna with a small frown.
What are we supposed to do now that we have two of those?
I ask. Starswirl will take the second one back to the past with him, says Luna. I will? asks Starswirl. Trust me, love. Someday things will be clear to you. I know better than to expect a straight answer out of either princess when they're like this. Still, something's bugging me.
Princess, carrying around all these secrets. I get why we have to, but it just doesn't seem right. I tried keeping everything that happens to me in the time loops to myself, and it nearly tore me apart. Wouldn't it be better to just completely open up with one another?
Luna smiles. Many things are less harmful to us when they are brought to light. Others are best left in the dark. Does knowing everything the other you did to become the Changeling Queen make you feel better? She asks. She holds up a hoof to forestall my protest. I know that she was not you. That is not what I mean to imply. You bear no capability for her actions, yet I'm sure it doesn't feel that way to you. Your distress is understandable, but irrational. Others would likely feel the same way. Once the shock of what happened wears off, I suspect your angst will dissipate on its own. Give it a few days to see if this is the case before you burden others with your tale, she says. Luna's ear twitches. Starswirl, let's give Twilight some privacy. She's about to have a visitor. I'm sure her friends will be here soon as well. Besides, I intend to make the most of the time I have left with you. She steps over to him and caresses his cheek with her hoof, slowly and gently dragging it along his skin until it comes to rest at his chest. Bring the new hat. The two walk out of the room and leave me alone with that disturbing mental image for a few minutes before there's a knock at the door.
Come in,
I call out. The door opens and Azalea enters. When she sees that I'm awake and alert, a wide grin breaks across her face. She rushes over to give me a hug. That's how I discover I also have a bruised rib. I give a little yelp of pain, and she lets go immediately. She lingers for a second, reaching out an unsure hoof to touch me, then pulling it away as if she's afraid I'll shatter at her touch. I smile and make up her mind for her by laying my own hoof over hers.
Applejack told me yesterday that they were all coming to see you when you got back from where you were going. I followed as soon as I could. I couldn't believe I missed you getting back. By the time I'd got here, they told me you had collapsed. I was worried half to death. They wouldn't tell me anything except that you'd been poisoned somehow. Are you okay?
I am now, I say to her. Thank you for being here. It means a lot.
I'm not going anywhere. Count on it,
she says, and leans in to peck my cheek. She glances over her shoulder, like she's afraid she's being watched by some pony.
Technically, you're on a controlled diet, but I tried some of the food here and it's not very good. So I snuck something in for you.
She opens her saddlebags and pulls out an azalea.
Sorry, it's a bit smushed.
My stomach growls at the sight of the snack and I grab it from her eagerly. My first impulse is to cram it all in my mouth at once, but instead, I just pull a few petals off and suck on them, closing my eyes and savoring the flavor. When I swallow them and open my eyes again, Azalea is looking at me with tears in her eyes.
What's wrong?
I ask.
Sorry, you're the one who's hurting, and I'm the one who's turning into a mess, she says. What happened? Where were you? Was it as scary as you thought it would be?
It wasn't so bad, I say. It's a gentle lie and a harmless one. I'll see if Luna was right before I spill the entire story to anypony. It would be a lot more to take in than even what happened during all the time loops I survived. At least that had a happy ending I could be proud of. But as awful as what I just saw was, it feels a little more detached. Wallowing in it won't help. I'd rather just move on. Azalea climbs into bed with me and lays her head down on my chest. My forelegs move automatically around her. A perfect fit.
I'm glad, she says. Tell me about it.
That moment crystallizes in my mind as I comprehend the words and I realize everything is about to go horribly wrong. It's just a poor turn of a phrase. She could have said, "Tell me anything about it," or "Do you want to talk about it?" or "I'm here to listen," or almost anything else that could have meant exactly the same thing. But no, she worded it as a command, albeit a gentle one, and the venom still coursing through my system takes it literally. I fight it as hard as I can, but a few seconds later, the whole story starts to pour from my mouth. It isn't that bad at first, as I'm telling her about getting captured and taken to the throne room and what we found there. The first time she reacts is when I repeat what Queen Sparkle mentioned about our sleeping with Luna. At that, she pulls away from my chest and sits bolt upright in bed next to me, looking at me with an expression that's both a little hurt and a little impressed. I want to scream at her to interrupt me. Tell me to hold on so we can talk about that, and I can warn her about what the venom actually does, but my mouth is otherwise occupied. It isn't until I start telling her about going down into the dungeon that I start to truly panic, looking at her with pleading eyes and trying to will her to stop me, to cut me off with one of those wonderful kisses the way she's done before. but she doesn't. I start to repeat everything Chrysalis said, word for word, including every single time she intentionally used the pronoun you to describe Queen Sparkle's actions to me. I want to curse myself for having spent so long honing my memory, doing all sorts of exercises so I'd be able to recall in an instant every word of one of Celestia's lectures. Azalea has pulled as far away from me as she can, working herself subconsciously down towards the foot of the bed. She's staring at me like I'm a completely different pony, her eyes full of fear, but I still can't shut up. When I get to our being pursued by the Queen and all the hateful accusations she flung at me, Azalea closes her eyes and shakes her head. I've almost reached the part where we hold up in the vault when Azalea says what I would have given anything to hear 10 minutes ago.
Please stop,
she begs. I finally can.
Azalea, I'm so sorry. It's the venom that's still in my system, that's all. Otherwise, I wouldn't have told you that. But that's what happened? She asks. That's what happened. It's over now, I promise,
I say. She stares at me like she's trying to figure out something.
If you had been the one stuck in the loop, that wouldn't have happened to you, right? I mean, you're strong. Nothing could ever push you to do such awful things to a pony you loved. Not in a million years. Tell me the truth.
I wish she hadn't added that last part.
The truth is that those were unique circumstances, and it all turned out fine. Those things didn't happen to me. That wasn't what I asked. True or false? Nothing could ever really make you do any of those things,
she says as she stares at me.
False,
I say. Azalea squeezes her eyes shut like she's trying to block out the whole world.
Azalea, listen. You don't understand just how bad it would have gotten for her. Any pony in that situation would end up the same way eventually. I wouldn't. Ever. No matter how bad it got, I would never do to you what you say she was doing to Luna. And I can't believe you could ever say that there's a set of circumstances, no matter how unlikely, where you could treat some pony that way, she says. Just the fact that you say you can understand how she could... Hey, Azalea, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. I want to put this behind me just as much as you do. Why don't we talk about something happier? Like, what do we want to do for our next date?
I ask. I'll reach over to her and stroke a bit of her mane. When I do, the worst possible thing happens. She flinches away from me as I touch her. Even worse, she's been sitting precariously on the bed's edge. The twitch shifts her off balance, and she topples backwards to the floor.
Azalea, are you hurt?
I ask. She gets up slowly and stiffly.
I think I twisted my wing a bit. I should go to the nurse's station and get an ice pack. I should go,
she says. There's a faraway look in her eyes, and she won't meet my gaze.
I think I need a break. A break? You mean from talking about this, right?
I ask, desperate. Please, don't let this be happening. Not like this.
I need some time to think about things,
she says, and walks towards the door. She opens it and stops in the frame.
I'm sure I'll see you around town sometime, Twilight,
she says without looking back. She steps through, and the door closes behind her with a dreadful finality. I want to leap out of bed and chase her down, make her understand that she's wrong about me, about us. I can't seem to will my legs to move, though. After several unsuccessful tries, I remember Fluttershy telling me to stay in bed earlier. Until the venom clears or some pony tells me otherwise, This bed might as well be a cage. All I can do is bury my face in my pillow and impotently scream my frustrations out. Later that night, I have a nightmare about being back in the time loop. The first one in months. Azalea isn't there for me when I wake up.